Hey everybody, as I said, my name's Samuel Spencer and I'm Chief Executive Officer of Aristotle Metadata. And I'm here today to talk to you on behalf of our colleagues in the New South Wales Government who are supporting the Metadata New South Wales initiative. And the goal of this program and the goal of the platform that underpins this program is really designed to support data governance across the organisation, across the entire New South Wales Government. So what we're going to be talking about today is not only what the platform is and where it's come from, we're also going to be talking about how you, if you're in the New South Wales public sector, can get involved. We'll be looking at a couple of examples and we'll be providing some information for people who are outside of New South Wales Government who are interested in this program as well. So I think there's a little bit for everybody for us to talk through. And really what we want to talk through is why this is important. I think I'm someone who's very passionate about data governance, but I think that the biggest thing we'll be talking about today is how we really communicate this with the rest of our organization. Because while we as practitioners and we as professionals might understand the importance of this, when we can tie it to business outcomes, when we can tie it to operating outcomes, it really helps us build that executive buy-in. So that's a bit of an overview of what we're going to be talking through today. So as I said, what we're going to be covering through this agenda is, a little bit of a Q&A of what is Metadata New South Wales, what is this platform that you're all here to look at and learn about, and a little bit of a background history of how it's come about as well, along with, information on who's already using the system and what you can do to get involved. We'll look at a couple of examples of how this is helping with data governance, because I think that's a really important facet of this. And then we'll actually be doing a bit of a live demo. We're not going to do anything crazy. We'll do a little bit of a live demo to show you what it looks like when you start to get involved with the platform as well. After that, we'll be stopping recording, and I think there are actually a number of users from Metadata New South Wales. So for those of you who are curious about how this works, I'll be helping moderate those questions. I might answer some as well, but I'm hoping for a little bit of interaction towards the end. So if you are an active user of Metadata New South Wales, stick on and help your colleagues across the public sector really start to take advantage of this. So without further ado, what is Metadata New South Wales? So Metadata New South Wales is a system that's designed to help us find data across the New South Wales public sector. There's a lot of really good information for government programs, for researchers and for citizen scientists that exists across the entire New South Wales government. But generally we have this challenge where not everybody knows that it exists. One of the biggest barriers to data use is data discovery. If we don't know that data is available, then we can't find it and we can't talk about it. The way that Metadata New South Wales is helping with this problem is by providing a system that's not around storing data. So it's not around replacing systems like data.nsw.gov.au. It's designed to be a place where people can talk about potentially sensitive data that can't be made publicly available. So unlike data.gov.au or data.nsw.gov.au, which is already available for people to upload and share data with the general public, Metadata.NSW is designed for people to put in that context around data assets that may be potentially sensitive. And this is a really important part of data governance because when we talk about information, when we talk about what's available, we know how to control it better. We can't control assets if we don't know where they are or what they contain. So it's really designed to help us talk about and communicate about that sensitive data, because without that information, we can't request it and we can't find it. So what you'll find is when you start to visit this site, there's a lot of text, there's a lot of text content, there's a lot of business content, and there's a lot of legislative information around why these assets exist, because that's what's really needed for us to share that data. When users can search through it and can find information, and we'll look at an example of search later on, they actually start to understand more about what that data means and whether or not it's going to be suitable for their use. So this has actually come about because of the New South Wales government's data strategy that was launched in 2021 and happened about midway through the process of this program. And what it looked at was it looked at not just things that New South Wales government wanted to do from a data perspective around management, privacy, and security, but also around that discovery aspect and around, how we can promote the use of metadata to assist with the discovery. So I've pulled out a couple of key snippets here that really talk to those key themes around discovery and trust, which is really, again, what we're trying to promote through this platform. What we're really trying to encourage people to think of is data from an aspect of, communication, from collaboration, and from documentation. When we can pull all of that information into a single location, we actually unlock a large capability for us to document and find what assets exist across a number of different areas. So not only is it about that technical aspect, it's about all the reasons why we're collecting data and also, where that data is coming from. I think someone's not on mute. So if one of my assistants can see we can find that, that would be fantastic. So as I was saying, like Metadata New South Wales is really designed to focus on that discovery aspect. When we can get users in and talking about what data exists, who's been responsible for reviewing that information, and how that's been made available to specific audiences, including across government or published to the wider internet, it unlocks our ability to really reuse these valuable assets. We spend a lot of time, we put a lot of effort into collecting data and to managing data. But if we're not trying to reuse that data, we're really losing a lot of the value that it has. So this is really designed around helping connect users who can use data with data that exists across a large range of contexts. So to understand where we got to, today, I think it's important for us to look at the progress of where we've gotten to. So the progress of where we started from and how we've gotten to this point. Aristotle Metadata has actually had quite a long-running partnership, a little bit over 5 years of partnership now with the New South Wales government that started back in 2019, where we actually developed a pilot with the Family and Community Analytics and Insights research area that's now become part of the Department of Communities and Justice. So we worked with a series of experts there who were looking at bringing in a program to support the documentation of some very critical and highly valuable assets, including the human services data set. One of the biggest parts of the program was really making sure that researchers were aware of what data was available, specifically for that reason that they wanted to connect researchers with policy programs and make sure that the data that was available to them was correctly being interpreted and only being provided to the right people. So that metadata was a really critical component in actually being able to help researchers produce new reports and new research around child interactions with justice systems, child interactions with welfare systems across, the New South Wales State Service. From there, we actually started to expand out. And as I said, in 2021, really closely timed with the data strategy, we started working with the Data and Analytics Centre of the Department of Community Customer Services to look at a platform that would exist alongside Data.NSW. The idea here was that what we'd developed at FACS had really started to, to show a value for, this cross-agency data set through the human services data set. And there was interest in getting more users across New South Wales government involved. So from there, we started a pilot with the Department of Communities and Justice and with DCS to turn what was the FACS registry into Metadata.New South Wales. So we actually worked to build that brand out with them, along with a data request process that we're not going to be talking too much about today, but really, taking that metadata to the next step and starting to unlock it for that data request process, again, to really connect researchers with data to make sure that they were requesting the right information for the right purposes and in the right ways. Through then, we've actually started to expand this out. So we're now working with the Department of Customer Services, who's made this platform available across all of New South Wales state government. So in 2023, we brought the Department of Education and Training on, who've actually built out a lot of their data and used this as a way for schools and for researchers to understand what data exists within this space, to really, again, connect data users with data custodians. And then over the last 2 years, we've really been moving forward and growing the number of users through both of these platforms to really accelerate the availability of data to keep safe. We can lock it away. But if we lock away a firework, we don't get anything from it. There's no beauty in a firework that's buried in a safe and kept secure. It's only when we can use these things safely that we actually get a lot of value out of it. So what we really want to do is make it possible for users to know what's available, how to request it, and how to connect with that data so that they're using it appropriately. And that's really what the next phase of this program is around, is bringing more people like yourselves onto the platform to make users across government and inside government aware of what data is available, so that we can share it with the right people to really hit those outcomes. And I'll talk about some of those outcomes in a few slides' time. So how does it operate? So as I said, my name's Sam and I'm from Aristotle Metadata, and we provide that technology layer. But the thing that I want us to talk about is that services layer that sits over the top. We've been working with DCS to really promote Metadata New South Wales as an ongoing platform and an ongoing system to help users understand how to develop content and how to talk about their data appropriately. It's not about learning a particular tool. We exist as one part of that technology layer, but we know that technology layer may change in future. What we want to do is make sure that we're really promoting that good practice across government. So not only are we taking that security focus of making sure that we're not bringing data into this platform, it's really about users talking about the data they've collected, why they've collected, and where it's come from. It's also doing that in a nice standards-based way. So we actually follow a lot of international standards for data documentation, and we promote that through the use of the tools. So we're really teaching people really good transferable skill sets. It's all about knowledge retention and knowledge recovery for us. So we're not wedding people into a system. We're teaching people how to do this so that they can continue to maintain it moving forward. So what the tool's designed to do is make that more accessible so people can start doing the right things earlier and continue to build that practice over time. It's not about doing this once and doing a transformation and hoping that we get it right the first time. It's about building a culture where we continue to iterate on what good practice means within our organization. The other thing is that we've built this platform in a way that allows us to segment this across government. So we've got 3 examples up here. So there's 3 organizations or 3 departments that have made their content publicly accessible or made their existence publicly available through the platform. So that's the Department of Communities and Justice, Education, and the New South Wales Telecommunications Authority. But there's actually a large number of other departments that have already started either using it in a private capacity or have started trials who aren't making that information publicly available through the platform as well. And that's really where that permissions control comes into play, is we've actually seen examples where users are sharing content across government, but not with the wider public through the permissions controls in the system. And it's also designed to scale out. So we say your agency or department here because that's really what the tool's designed to do. We want to get more people involved in this platform to get more of that rich understanding of how data exists across New South Wales government. Because the more we can bring in, the easier it's going to be for new people moving forward to re-leverage the data that exists, and also reuse the governance controls and the documentation that's already been provided to really make sure that we're building a rich understanding of the similarities of data across the entire public sector. So really the takeaway here is we've designed this from a privacy first perspective to make sure it's easy for any new department to come on and control their own governance. And we'll talk about what it looks like from an agency perspective to help you understand, how you can get involved and how you can start to build those governance processes as well. So that's really what we're trying to kind of unlock here. For those of you who aren't familiar with what metadata means in general, I've included this slide because I think it's really important to contextualize this or to give you the tools, if you are familiar with metadata, of how we can talk about this when we're trying to bring the rest of our departments on board as well, when you're trying to talk to other people to get them involved. So I think the classic example is looking at a warehouse versus a catalog. I like to use the example of Amazon because I'm a bit of an avid book reader, and I can go to Amazon.com at any time I'd like, and I can search for books that are available in their warehouse. That doesn't give me the right to go in and jump in and take a book. It doesn't give me the ability to just jump in and start taking things from their warehouse. And we want to think about data and metadata in the same way. Just because we've got metadata and just because we're telling people what data assets are available doesn't give them the authority to jump into the warehouse and start building queries and taking things out willy-nilly. Metadata is really designed to help us understand what's there, what's available, and how I can get access to it. So just like the Amazon, book catalog tells me what books I can order, whether or not they're in stock, and how I can get access to them, our metadata register acts exactly the same way. It tells us what data exists within our warehouses. It tells us what's there, who can access it, what rules are required to get access, and when it was updated, or even if it's available anymore. So it's really designed to help users know what data is available prior to them getting access to it. So what I've done is I've grabbed a couple of examples from Metadata New South Wales directly to show you examples that you'll be able to access, straight after this webinar, or if you're one of those people who kind of multitasks, pull up a browser and just go metadata.nsw.gov.au and see if I'm telling the truth. So one of the examples that I think is really, really interesting and really important is the New South Wales Human Services dataset. This is one that we like to talk about quite a lot because it's actually a very large and very sensitive data asset that has, as you can see, 27 years of information about people across New South Wales government, not just citizens, but students, people who come through health services centres. So it really contains information about everybody across that period of time. And it looks at some very sensitive information, not just health information and education, but also interactions with the justice system. And this data has been really critical in reporting on closing the gap measures. It's really important for us to have this information so that we can continue to measure over time how we're tracking against government programs and how we're tracking against performance measures. Are we doing better as a public service? Are we doing better as a society? Having good data and having good metadata to support the use of that data is really critical to it. I also think it's really important to show how much text we want to see people putting in around these assets so that when users are seeing this data, they actually understand what it means before they get access to the rows and the columns in the databases themselves. Because the more text we put in, the more we can describe what these assets mean, the better the search engine can run for users to actually find it. They can type in, I'm looking for data from 1990, or I'm looking for data about children in danger, and they can start to pull those records up because we've given it the necessary context to do it. The key advantage of this is not only does it reduce discovery, the more we can encourage not just yourselves, but also everybody in our organizations, everybody in our department to write down what data they're working on and write down what data they're collecting or creating. It actually increases the security of the data as well. Every time we've gone through a security assessment with one of our clients, one of the general pieces of feedback is the more we talk about data, the more we know what data exists out there, and we reduce that potential burden of shadow data or data that nobody knows about that has potentially private information. One thing that I was reading about in the news just a couple of hours ago, hate to break it to you, but the newest data leakage is TPG or IINet. One of the largest, or the second largest ISP in Australia, suffered a data breach because of exactly this kind of problem. There was access to information that wasn't documented, and they weren't able to respond to that appropriately, which meant that there was a large data leakages of names and email addresses. So talking about our data isn't just a nice to have, it helps us secure and manage that data as well. Beyond just talking about it, we can actually also capture that structural information as well. So we can really start to look at that fine-grained information around what tables and rows and columns exist within our data without potentially violating the sensitivity of it as well. What this snapshot shows is it actually shows you, all of the different tables that have been made publicly available through Metadata.New South Wales, along with the information to support how this data is used. So definitions of things like case plans or dates of birth or Indigenous status or employment statuses, all of those codes and categories are captured alongside the definitions, which means that people are able to interpret that information faster, which builds a trust in reporting. When we know what data means, when we know one is a full-time employed person, we can do analytics faster and the outputs can be more trusted as well. The other thing that you'll see here is that we're also able to permissions control down to that column-based level as well. So when we're looking at an individual table, if there's sensitive information, we can actually, restrict the permission and restrict the visibility of that to specific audiences as well. Because even the metadata does have sensitivity, we do know that. And what we want to do is make sure that we're putting all the controls in place so that as people are bringing more and more of this rich information together, we can start to see permissions control so that only the right people are getting access to the right information. As I said, one of, I think, the most important things here is how we've seen this platform be used to aid with the reusability of this documentation. One mistake that people often make is they think about the potential time requirements to document this information. And what we say is it actually becomes less and less of a time burden over time. Because what we see is that data remains relatively static once we've set it up. It only requires a little bit of ongoing maintenance, just like a garden, to make sure that we're not missing any changes. The other advantage is by recording, codes and concepts like this, we can link them across data assets, which improves that data linkage. We're no longer relying on probabilistic matches or, hoping that it's the same set of codes or looking at matches to see if they're approximately correct. When we encourage users to curate that information, not only does it improve that data linkage, but it also supports other technology integrations as well. I think AI is a really big thing that people are interested in, and this documentation becomes a really critical path to us, supporting that machine learning by giving it context to learn from. One in this context has a very clear known meaning of an Aboriginal person without a Torres Strait Islander origin, which means, machines that are taking this data, matching it with the correct metadata, are drawing the right inferences out of it. So not only are we reducing time for future documentation, we're keeping that human curation effort to the minimum possible, and then also aiding that linkage and that integration moving forward. And then one of, I think, probably the most impactful examples that we've seen is the ability for us to manage metadata from a strategic level. So what we mean by that is not just managing it from a perspective of technical tables or data that exists in systems. We manage data for a reason. And in government, it's very clear we're talking about human outcomes. We're talking about citizen outcomes and making sure that we're doing the right things. So one of the things that I think is most interesting is parts of the Department of Communities and Justice have actually made a number of their performance indicators specifically around closing the gap measures publicly available so that people can review, how certain performance or programs are being measured and what data is necessary to support that measurement. Not only does it help us, educate stakeholders on how data is directly transferring to outcomes, but it's also helping us increase the trust in that as well. We can only, measure an improvement over time if we're measuring it the same way year on year. When we can go back 4 or 5 years and start to measure an outcome against a performance requirement the same way, we start to be able to see how certain changes to those programs are making a difference, which is, I think, one of the most important reasons why metadata is important is not just for discovery, not just around reuse or integrations. It's really about human outcomes. Being able to tie data to a human outcome and being able to demonstrate how we're measuring these changes over time becomes really, really important. And it's not just a theoretical exercise for us. I think one of the most interesting things is routinely we actually help review some of the data that comes out of the Productivity Commission. And what we've shown or what we've been able to see is that New South Wales is actually, performing quite well on a national level. So on the left, you'll see that the gap, the Indigenous gap in life expectancy over the last couple of years of data that have been made available, New South Wales actually is performing quite well and is closing that gap much faster than the rest of Australia at large. Whereas on the right, we're seeing that the rates of children in out-of-home care are actually reducing as well. So what that means is Indigenous children are able to receive care in their communities with their family groups, rather than being placed into situations where they're losing that connection to country. So we're seeing people, well, we're seeing that gap being closed again in the right way to make sure that we're really achieving outcomes for some of our most vulnerable citizens in Australia. So hopefully that's a bit of a snapshot of what we've made available through Metadata.New South Wales and why this is really important. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch screens, which is always fun. I love when I have to switch screens. And I'm actually we're going to do a bit of a click through of a couple of particular use cases to give you a bit of a guided tour on what you can do today. So there's a number of things that you can do today to start engaging with Metadata New South Wales before your agency comes on board. And then also look at how you can talk about why a space for your agency is going to be really important. So feel free to grab your notes. I'm gonna do that thing where I have to babble and switch screens. So just bear with me. I'm gonna grab my mouse and I'm going to. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen? Fantastic. You getting any thumbs up? They hidden behind the camera. There we go. There's a couple of thumbs up. Perfect. Okay, so fantastic. So first thing I wanted to show you was really what is Metadata New South Wales. So metadata.newsouthwales.gov.au is a program that's specifically available for everybody to access. It's actually an internet-facing portal with a lot of permissions controls around it. So it's a site designed for users to go to and start looking for information. One of the first things that people ask us is, how do I find data through this? And the way that you do it is through, funnily enough, a really big search bar in the middle that gives you the ability to start typing in and searching for data that's available. You can filter through a number of different options. There's a lot of different options available here. So you can look up different glossary terms. You can restrict it on the left. So I'm going to restrict this just to data sets. And what I can see here is it starts to show me a list of data assets that have been made available for users to review before they've even logged in or signed up. So the idea is that it's designed to give you the ability to understand what data is available before you've gone into the system. So that's probably our first stage. We'll have a look at how to register in a second. But the other thing that I wanted to show you was why this is important from a research perspective as well, and why this is important from a use perspective. So one of the other examples that I'd like to go to is I'm going to browse through particular governance groups or registration authorities, we call them in the standard and in Aristotle, that have made data available for certain levels of use. So the example I'm going to look at here is some of that schools data that I think has been documented really well. And I'm going to look at information that's been made available and has been endorsed for use. So I'm going to scroll down to my National Education Standards Committee. And when I bring this up, I can see two really important things. So first of all, at the top, I can see that there's a data dictionary that's been made available, a list of all the assets that are there. But the other thing that's most important from a user perspective is it also shows me a high-level overview of how certain things have been endorsed. So what does it mean that somebody has reviewed this content and made it publicly available? And that's a really important thing for trust, because it shows users, first of all, what has been reviewed, how it's been reviewed, and who's responsible for that as well. So really what we want to see is, a lot of that data governance activity isn't just about documentation. It's about making sure that users know who's responsible for the review and quality control of that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up my pre-canned example because I'm prepared. And what I can see here is a list of all the assets that have been made available by this group. at a particular certain point in time, and that have been reviewed to a certain quality as well. So I've jumped in and I've applied some filters, and what I can start to see here is information that was made available, when it was made available, and who it was made available to. So the idea is if researchers are looking from a browse perspective, they're trying to find what data's been made available in certain topics or certain areas, we can start to see and control that as well. If you ever get confused at any time, there's probably two things to note. One is there's a lot of help. So up the top of the screen, there's a help icon, or there's a help menu. You can bring that up and it'll take you to all the help around this site. The other thing that's really important is from the homepage as well. The New South Wales government has actually put in a lot of information around how to use this as well. So there's a lot of capability for users to put in their own documentation, their own help. So if you'd like to learn more about what Metadata New South Wales is trying to do and how it's achieving that, you can actually browse through that as well. So all those guides have been made available for users across the New South Wales public sector. The other thing that I wanted to show you as well is, so if you are in the New South Wales Public Service, you can actually start to use the site today. So it's available for anybody with a .nsw.gov.au domain to register for an account and start using. If you're on a different Aristotle or you're interested in a different trial, put a comment in the chat box and we can kind of reach out and talk about that after. But for New South Wales government employees who are looking to sign on, this is actually a really great way for you to start using the tool. So from the homepage or anywhere in the site, you'll see this sign up button. And all you need to do is, put in some information, put in a password, and it'll send out some information for you to access the site to activate your account. If you do have issues getting your account activated, just email us or contact us through the contact form. So again, on the homepage, there's a contact form down the bottom. So if you do have issues getting that account activated, either us or some of the administrators on the site can help you out there as well. One thing that I quickly wanted to show, and I'm just switching screens while I leave that up, is I'm just going to log in with my details, and I'm not going to share how I do that with you because that's sensitive. There we go. So the other thing that I wanted to show you is now that I've logged in, there we go. Now that I've logged in, I actually have a number of new controls that are available to me. So I've logged into the site, and the two that I really wanted to show here were really focusing on what you can do with the system, today when you start going in. One of the things that's going to be most important for you, and I'm just bringing up an example, is one of the things that is most important to a lot of users is the ability for you to flag, personal content and come back to it. So if you're a standard user who's created an account, once you've logged in, you'll actually have the ability to go through and tag specific items as well. So you'll be able to click that flag, favorite it, and you'll be able to come back to those in future. That's really important when you come back to data sets quite frequently, which we see is quite common. Often we don't just find a data asset and use it once. We'll come back to these assets time and time again. So the ability for you to go in and in your dashboard, see a list of all the assets that you've flagged as important for you and you alone becomes really, really useful. On the left, you'll see a number of the other controls that we won't go through now, but you'll see that we're starting to see some of those controls around the use of content, the ability for us to work within our groups, talk through items, and request reviews. So there's a lot of capability that you'll slowly start to unlock as you go through. One other thing that I think is really important for users once you've logged in is the ability to collaborate and communicate with users of the system as well. So what you'll be able to do is you'll actually be able to open issues and ask questions about content. So once you've activated an account, you can jump in, ask for clarification, suggest potential updates, or request information about how data sets are being used. But that's only available once you've created an account. So a really big incentive for you to jump in to start unlocking that capability. And I think that's really what we wanted to talk through today, is to give you a bit of a flavor of why we want you to start getting involved, is to be able to see what information's there. One other really important aspect for government users in New South Wales is there are certain assets that have been published only to people who are logged in through the system. So the ability for you to create an account and log in will give you access to additional assets that the general public won't have access to as well. So there's a couple of different reasons for you to jump on, start to get involved, and if you do have issues, make sure that you do go back to this contact us form. Because this is necessary not just for contacting us and the administration team for support, but this is also the way that you're going to request access for your agency or your department when you start to go down that journey as well. What we'll do now is I'll just bring that up, and while I bring that up, I'm going to switch my screen again. So that's what the contact form looks like. Probably the last thing that we wanted to talk through today is why you want to get your agency on board as well. So what we've talked through is, what's going to be really valuable for you as a data user, as a data custodian, to start to find, flag, and communicate about data, I think is a really important use case. But what you're not going to have is the ability to start building those teams and building those governance programs for your agency unless you're already on board. So one of the benefits for your department is the ability for you to start to create those private spaces within Metadata.New South Wales and control the visibility of content that's going through. So we can start to bring in our teams, we can start to bring in all of our governance information, and we can start to actively, build that operational program around getting people doing data governance. It's not just talking about it, it's showing them what to click, how to talk about things, who to talk to, and giving them a tool that actually puts data governance into practice is, I think, a really big advantage of getting on here. As you can see, we do keep all of those different departments separated. So there's a lot of segmentation between the permissions controls for each different department, which means you can put your rules into practice as well. We're also putting in some controls to give each organization the ability to control, customized options, giving you the ability to create a custom landing page. And one of the things we'll be doing is sharing with you a worksheet on how you can get started in one of the follow-on emails after this. We'll send you some really good information. So that's probably the biggest thing about using the tool. The last thing I wanted to talk about before we go on to our Q&A is really just talking about what you can do, again today to start getting people in your organization thinking in this way. One of the things that we've been developing along with the tooling around Aristotle and Metadata New South Wales is also some really good methodologies and guides for users to start putting data governance into practice. So for us, what that really means is getting people documenting data regardless of how complete it is, getting them started, getting them pulling that information together, and giving them tools to share that with your quality control boards to review that and provide feedback so that we get a bit of a virtue cycle and that documentation continues to improve over time. Once we see that improvement, we start to look at how we can audit and bring those terms together, because we do start to see a bit of duplication. And then making sure that our leaders from an executive level are really promoting this. So we've packaged this up in a nice couple of acronyms and a really nice framework that's designed to really build those beliefs and those behaviors that we want people to embody in their organizations. So next week, we've got 2 training sessions up in Sydney. So on Tuesday afternoon, the Department of Education has very generously hosted a training program for people in the New South Wales Public Service. So if you're in the New South Wales Public Service and you'd like to learn not just what the tool is, but how to do this well and how to communicate it with your organization, there's a few slots available for training, but we're really close to capacity. So I'd suggest once the link comes up, hop in and register quickly. And then on Wednesday morning, we'll also be running one that's been supported by the Data Management Association of Australia. So DAMA is actually supporting a series of events around Australia. So if you're not in New South Wales government, if you're in federal government or you're in a corporate organisation in Sydney, we'll be running some in-person training there. And if you're interested in training from an external perspective, or from another state or territory, just pop that in one of the Q&As, and one of us will reach out about our forward program. So we've got a couple of other training events coming up in future as well. So if you're really interested, come along to one of our 2 training sessions next week. I promise there's no laptops involved. It's really just about good practice. And so really to kind of close out this before we move into our Q&A, there's a couple of things that I think you can do right now to kind of take this away. Is first of all, register for an account. Hop onto Metadata.NSW and start that process. We've worked to make sure that we can get as many New South Wales public servants on to make it easier for you to find that information and get involved. There's a lot you can do straight away. There's a lot you can do today to get involved in this program without waiting for approvals from the rest of your organisation. If you are interested in bringing a space on, we'll be helping contact people after this to help your organisation, or you can proactively reach out and just put a bit of a contact form together. So fill out the contact form, and we'll reach out to you about the processes and steps that are involved in getting onto Metadata New South Wales. And then, if you're interested in that training, come along. If you're not in New South Wales government, you can actually try Aristotle for free as well. So we have a free version for 10 users at aristotle.cloud, and you can start that evaluation journey today as well. So if you're not in New South Wales government and you are interested in how this works, hop onto aristotle.cloud, give it a try, and then see how it works, and then we can kind of see if make sure you're available for some of our upcoming public training sessions.